All right, well, thank you everyone who has joined us so far for our third event, Yacht Clubs of City Island. My name is Natalie Rosario Diaz, and I am the online programs coordinator for the City Island Nautical Museum. And I'm really excited to be here tonight at the museum. We have had this event in the works for some time, so we're excited to be bringing some representatives from some of the Yacht Clubs of City Island tonight to be here with us all and to speak. I am going to give them a few moments to introduce themselves, but before we go ahead and do that, I just wanted again to thank you all, remind you that this event is being recorded. If you have any questions or any comments, please go ahead and leave it in the chat box, as we are going to be reserving some time towards the end of the presentation to answer all of your questions. So I am going to go ahead and begin introducing our representatives that we have here with us this evening. We have Mr. Anthony Roscoe here. He is from the Harlem Yacht Club and he is their membership chair. We also have Peter G, also from the Harlem Yacht Club. He is their current Commodore. And we also have Evelyn Schneider, who is the historian from the Harlem Yacht Club. And we are again very, very appreciative for their attendance tonight. We also have from the City Island Yacht Club, George Keeper, who is their vice commodore. And again, we're just very excited that we have people from the actual clubs here to speak, because we know that some of this information is best received from those that live it every day and know it very well. So with that being said, thank you all again for being here with us this evening, and we're just going to go ahead and get started. So if you know anything about City Island, you know that besides being known for its seafood restaurants, it is originally known for its rich sailing and water sports history. We're going to take some time to go over all of the clubs that have once existed and flourished on City Island, with careful consideration to the history and beginnings of each club. Some of the clubs that have once called City Island home are no longer operating, while others continue to thrive. We're going to discuss all of that, and as I mentioned earlier, we are also going to reserve time for questions and comments. So please have those in whenever they come to mind. We are going to commence by talking about the Touring Kayak Club. Just give us a few seconds so we can get the slides going.
Okay, give us a few seconds. We're going to take care of the audio issue before we continue. How do I turn off the All right, we're going to try this again.
All right, if for whatever reason you're still experiencing issues hearing us, please let us know in the chat box and we are going to try our best to make it clearer. But as you're seeing on your screen right now, we've got a map of some of the yacht clubs on Eastchester Bay. So there's Harlem Yacht Club, City Island Yacht Club, Stuyvesant Yacht Club, and Morris Yacht Club, as well as Metropolitan, Bronxonia, and Locust Point Yacht Club. However, tonight we are going to begin discussing the Touring Kayak Club. Although it's not a yacht club per se, it is still a very important club on City Island, and it's one of the oldest. I actually had the pleasure of being able to visit this club, and I was able to sit and chat with one of their oldest members, Heinz Lau, who joked and told me he was practically born into the club. TKC began in the late 1920s. When in 1927, two gentlemen who crossed paths on the Hudson River while paddling their boats realized that they both had a passion for boating and water sports. After discussing for some time, they began to organize what would later become the Touring Kayak Club. The club was first housed in West's Boathouse on the Hudson River, and then it later moved to Grant's Boathouse on City Island. In 1931, however, 555 City Island Avenue was rented and it served as the club's home for about a decade. In 1932, Heinz Lau's mother, she joined the club after arriving to City Island from Germany. When she then later married his father, he also joined the club, and when Heinz was born, naturally he became a member as well, and it's been that way since. When the club first started, the applications were actually in German due to the majority of the members in this club being from Germany. But in the 1950s, they began to switch the applications to English, and now they have members from all backgrounds and all over the city, even members outside of the city. In 1941, the club was finally incorporated, and it moved to 539 City Island Avenue, where they were renting as well. However, in 1946, with the help of its members, the club was finally able to purchase its own property, where the club is still standing today. This is on 205 Beach Street. With their own property and a steady amount of members, the club continued to thrive, hosting the first City Island Marathon race in 1975. Which entails racing around City Island. The club has also hosted the Boot Hill Cup race, maintaining its rich racing and sailing history. Today, the club continues to operate as members still enjoy the sport of kayaking. And it's just a nice little photo of some members on some kayaks. Now we're gonna jump into the City Island Yacht Club. And as I mentioned, we do have their Vice Commodore here. So George, you can always feel free to jump in, but I'm gonna go ahead and just give a rough overview of the timeline. So in 1904 is when the club really began and was founded. The Burgee was raised on May 30th, 1905, the following year. It was incorporated, the club, on May 17th, 1907, and it moved to a few locations around the island. In 1910, the club rented the building on West Cross Street. In 1913, the club moved to East Cross Street. And then in 1919, the club finally purchased and moved to a much larger property on Pilot Street. This was under the leadership of Captain and Commodore Charles Packerty. This new building underwent renovations that included adding a porch and a dance hall. In 1928, the club hired a yard manager due to an increase in members, as more members meant more boats, which meant there needed to be someone in charge of the hauling and storing of these boats. Moving forward, in 1930, the club purchased new property on Reynolds Street that increased the club's size significantly, as this new land allowed for a bulkhead, pier, an extension of marine railway. All of these new additions allowed for larger boats to be able to be hauled and stored, and renovations continued throughout the years, especially following the 1938 hurricane that caused some serious damage to the building and boats that were in the fleet. Now we also have just some brief information on City Island Yacht Club. There's a long history of sailing, and they joined the Yacht Club Racing Association of Long Island Sound in 1914. They still have a very active racing program. This program was actually commenced by their Commodore Henry Sayers, who was in leadership in the years of 1926 until 1927. Because of the fact that they have a pretty decent amount of land and really good depth of water, they're allowed to house larger yachts. Samuel Smith was the first Commodore. Francine Alhide was the first woman Commodore. In 1938, the hurricane created immense damage to the property and damaged some boats in the fleet, as we have mentioned. In terms of races, because City Island Yacht Club has a very rich racing history, they're very big on the Big Tom race, which happens every Wednesday, and the Mid Bay, which happens every Labor Day. They also offer sailing classes for adults. So if that's something of interest to you, you can definitely contact the City Island Yacht Club. They also have a rich junior sailing program, which actually in 2020, this program won the Mary Confonta Prize for an outstanding STEM program. And they also have 3 types of different memberships. So there's an active membership, a shared club boat membership. You would need to be qualified as a skipper for this type of membership. And there's also a social or racing membership. George, is there anything that you would like to emphasize or anything about the club that is important to discuss?
Well, that's true. We're very, very big on the racing aspect of sailing and took a big interest in resurrecting the Wednesday night sailing at Big Tom, which has grown over the last few years. And one thing I learned over the last year or two, that back in the day, we actually owned the house behind the club, and the Commodore lived there
Yeah.
for many years. And so that house was sold years ago. And for some number of years, the steward actually lived at the club and lived upstairs. But that's no longer the case. But those are two interesting things that I learned. And the picture you see there, that's a current picture. But over the years, the porch was added, and the dining room to the south was added, and the main ballroom was also a big addition over the years. So the club is probably twice the size now that it was when it was first moved to this location.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of renovations and a lot of updates over the years.
I'm going.
So we're sharing some photos of City Island Yacht Club. Anything about these photos that you would like to share, George? Is there any interesting facts that you think would be interesting for our audience to know?
Well, these are pretty old.
Okay. All righty. So we're gonna move on and talk about the Harlem Yacht Club now. So I'm gonna give you all some brief information on their timeline and their beginnings. They actually started off of the island, and they began on the Harlem River. However, in 1883, which is when they began, they remained there for about a little over a decade and on the Harlem River. Like many clubs, the Harlem Yacht Club has a very active racing program, which we're also going to talk about. But as we see here, about 1894 is when the club purchased property and then moved to City Island. Around 1911 is when the Yacht Club hosted the historic race for their first of the YRA-LIS Memorial Day Regatta. In 1915, part of the clubhouse unfortunately burned down, but it was replaced by a 3-story building. In the 1930s, the Harlem Yacht Club helped found the Eastchester Bay Yacht Racing Association. Around the 1939, the World War II, there was a loss of members, and the club had to abandon the YRA-LIS Memorial Day race. In the 70s, sailing was becoming super popular again, and this is when the club saw an increase in its members after having the loss due to World War II. So some more information, as we mentioned, they began off of the island, but moved to the island in 1894. They used to belong to the New York Racers Association, but they now belong to the New York Long Island Sound. Like I mentioned, they have a very active racing history that continues to this day. They have a thriving and flourishing partnership with the Fordham University rowing team, and they offer lessons to members. Is there anything about the club that is important for us to emphasize, to go into detail?
Yes,
How much time do you have?
Yeah, we have time, no worries.
we were founding members of the Long Island Sound Yacht Racing Association. We were also founding members of the New York Yacht Racing Association and the Eastchester Bay Yacht Racing
Yes.
Association. And also, maybe you're familiar with Lloyd's Register. We were in there from the beginning too. We were actually in Harlem for 20 years. We had a headquarters in Harlem and a station in various places. The station was at College Point before we moved it to City Island. And that was the building that was next to Artie's.
Yeah.
That they used. They actually, our members towed it on a barge over here. And that was our original station on City Island for a few years before we built our first clubhouse. And then I think it was in 1915 that clubhouse burned down, and we built another one.
Yeah.
And we're still occupying that one. And it was for about 60 years that we participated in the Long Island Sound Yacht Racing Association handicap championships that revolved around Long Island Town races. We have the Memorial Day race every year.
Yeah.
And in 1911, we had the first Star Class race, which was a racing boat, a small racing boat, which with a deep keel. And it was raced in the Olympics for about 100 years, I believe. And they just stopped racing it there a couple of years ago. I think they're doing lasers now or something. But it's a renowned boat, and we had a team of star class racers who they formed the East River Division of the Star Class Racing Fleet. And our member, Sidney Treat, was the Star Class. They made him the Star Class Commodore for life. And that's about all I have to add. I'm familiar with the ancient history.
You are the historian, right?
It's worth noting that we keep speaking about how many times we had to rebuild that building and,
Yeah.
and raise it, move and that sort of thing. The island is quite aware of the no-name storm that we had in 1992. Actually, Anthony was Commodore, Anthony Roscoe, he was Commodore during that time or soon thereafter. And he and several other members got together and designed or had designed the current building in terms of the front with the atrium. We did, the building ended well before where that atrium comes out now. And they put some financing together with a small business loan, that sort of thing. And it was quite a triumph. And in fact, next year, we're looking at sunsetting that particular loan for that repair. So we didn't think it would be around that long.
No.
The whole Yacht Club. Anthony's now,
Because my name is on.
Anthony's 40 years there now, and I'm 36 years. You guys are actually the same amount of time.
It
So a
changed,
little bit of time.
changed the club quite a bit, because we now have dining on the water,
Yeah.
bars on facing the water, and everything used to, you had your back to the water. And the parking lot was way, when we were dining, you were looking out at the parking lot. But yeah, things have come along in the last few years. And we also have which is not mentioned there, is the Club Hope program.
Okay.
As well as City Island has that, we have that also.
Would you like to speak a little bit on that?
Yeah, well, it's fairly simple, you know, you come and, we call it intermediate member. We'll have either a kayak at the dock, or they can choose to sail the club boats. And once you qualify, you can take the boat out, you block the time on the website, and you go out. Then you have your active members, which are boat owners and have moorings in the fleet. And you have your strictly social members. Can you go back to the picture of that? Yeah.
Yeah.
If you look at the house there, all the way to the right, you see that little building, the little house with windows?
Yes.
All the way to the bottom right. That was the launch house that was on the dock. This is right after Sandy's picture.
Oh, wow.
That thing floated off the dock in the water. We retrieved it, put it over there for about a year, and then rebuilt it and put it back, belongs out on the dock, right where the gazebo. But anyway, so this picture's fairly old. 15, I don't understand. But anyway. But that's about it. It was completely rebuilt. We had pilings driven around the house to keep it from sinking.
Yeah.
And there's steel underneath the house to keep it where it is right now. So a lot of the ground could erode away, but the club will still be there.
Yeah.
This is not going away this time.
It'll still be there.
And we also provide a youth sailing program at the club, and we do adult lessons as well in partnership with Port Sailing.
Anything about the timeline that we should emphasize, or anything that maybe wasn't on here that is important to Harlem's history?
Yes, 1986 I joined.
Very So it's been, as you guys can tell, they've been longtime members, which says a lot. So those are just some photos that we are sharing on Harlem. Yeah. Okay. All right, so now we're gonna move on to the Island Boat Club. So in 1924, the club's original marina was built by husband and wife, Elizabeth and Reginald Ratcliffe. It was known as Island Canoe and Yacht Club in those days. The clubhouse, which is located at 515 City Island Avenue, has been the club's home since its inception. Is large enough to house boats of all shapes and sizes. They provide storage of boats for their members, as well as some minor repair and painting work if needed. The club is a member of the National Yachting Association and is still in operation today. And this is just some photos that we have of the Island Boat Club to share with you today. We're also going to discuss now the Morris Yacht and Beach Club. So here is a timeline. In 1900, the club was incorporated under the laws of New York State. This happened on September 6th, and the club was housed at that point in Bound Mansion. In 1904, Bound Mansion was wrecked by a fire, which obviously caused a lot of damage to the clubhouse and to the club itself. In 1914, the first of the annual, and please forgive me, I have a hard time with this word, but Hassan Pepper dances was held, which is an annual dance that obviously happens every single year. But 1914 was the year that it began. In 1920, unfortunately, the clubhouse was struck by another fire, which again caused a lot of damage. In 1936, the club was then moved to Belden Point on City Island. The following year, the club purchased its first property on City Island. And the following year after that, the club was renamed Morris Yacht and Beach Club. And unfortunately, in the same time, the hurricane destroyed the pier and the bathhouse of the yacht club. In 1942, a unit of Coast Guard Auxiliary was established by the club members. In the 1940s and the 1970s, the clubhouse experienced many renovations. Through the 1960s, the mortgage on the property was paid off and a gala mortgage burning ceremony was held during this time. Now we're moving all the way to 2006, which was when the clubhouse was again hit by another fire, completely destroying it. In 2009, a new clubhouse was being built, and the following year, it was finally completed. So a little bit more information. This club was incorporated under the laws of New York State in 1900. It was first known as the Oak Point Yacht Club, as it was originally located on Oak Point. It was then moved to Bound Mansion in Broadman's Neck, New York, near City Island. But as I mentioned earlier, in 1904, the Bound Mansion was unfortunately destroyed by a fire, which was then rebuilt by members. In 1914, the club began its annual Hassenfur dances. And then, as I mentioned, moving forward, they experienced other fires. So we're looking at some photos of, Morris Yacht Club, of their original home, their original clubhouse, when it was on Belden Point, and what it looks like a little bit closer to today. Now we're going to move forward to discussing the Stuyvesant Yacht Club. The Stuyvesant began in the 1800s near 125th Street in Manhattan, and it was established by a group of men that enjoyed the water sports. In 1889, members purchased a boat named Gerard Stuyvesant and then towed it to the Port Morris section of the Bronx. The club was then officially named the Stuyvesant because of this boat. In 1934, the club was forced to move its location due to pressure from the New York City Parks Department and their commissioner at that time, Robert Moses. This came as a result of Orchard Beach being established. Therefore, the club purchased new property on Eastchester Bay, to serve as a clubhouse. In 1968, that clubhouse was hit by a fire, completely destroying it. But in 1969, a new clubhouse was built, and this was located on 10th Center Street. However, in 2012, when Hurricane Sandy hit New York, the club was negatively impacted as the hurricane caused a lot of damage, particularly to the boats that were being stored at the clubhouse. Many of these boats belong to members who, unfortunately, after the damage, left the club. The loss of all these members in the years between 2012 and 2013 ultimately led to the club's demise and closure in 2015. We do have some photos of the Stuyvesant Yacht Club to share with you all. This is what the club looked like when it was located by Jack's Rock. is on Windsor Street Beach in the late 1940s. So we went through most, not all, but most of the clubs that have existed on City Island. Now we wanna open it up to you all. If there's any questions or any comments that have come up as we've discussed, please feel free to unmute yourself if you are brave. If not, you can type it into the chat box. But we are more than eager to answer any questions.
I guess I'll start with one. Can you guys talk a little bit more about like what it's like on the weekend there? Like, you know, what goes on at the Harlem and City Island Yacht Club on a typical weekend right now?
Well, typical weekend, people, I guess, start showing up around 11, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And you can see people meeting their guests, sometimes sitting down, having some lunch before they go out. And then the launch gets kind of busy and you see everybody getting their bags of ice and walking down the dock, and everybody's talking about what the weather's going to be, how much wind is going to be, where it's coming from. If there's a race, then you get quite a number of folks in the parking lot, and then you start to find a spot. And then you see all these race crews go out with the uniforms on. And then in the afternoon, it gets a little bit slow, and then everyone comes back pretty much at the same time and wants to have dinner at the restaurant. And then you see a lot of harried waitresses and wait staff there trying to take care of everybody. But the weekends are always the best time to be there. Many times that porch is filled with people, 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. So it's quite nice on the weekends.
Well, our weekends are pretty much the same. The traffic has a lot to do when people show up. We have a lot of members out of New Jersey, actually as far as Pennsylvania in some cases, and certainly Manhattan and locals. They start the same way. It builds rather quickly. Folks start out in the restaurant and bar a little bit. We head out to their boats, do some sailing. We've noted that the culture of boating, whether it's sailing or power boating, has changed a bit since the time that I joined the club. That I noticed when back in the 80s and that sort of thing, there were a lot more folks that stayed on the boats overnight, used the boat as part of their vacation or weekend time away. They didn't have to travel off island to go home, and they stayed on the boat. And we would accommodate them with 24-hour launch service, and that has gone away quite a bit. We still have members that will stay on board overnight, but not to the degree that we had back then. We're still active. The folks still go out sailing. It's mostly day sailing now. The cruises, or the organized cruising that we used to have has waned somewhat. Folks aren't going out that far. We encourage it. We do what we can to get folks out there. But the racing is a bigger part of it lately. And as long as everybody enjoys their time, we just went through a pandemic and we discovered that, you know, you even hate to use that word anymore. Everybody's so tired of it. But we discovered very early on that the best place to be was on a boat during the pandemic. You could escape all the nonsense and being so close to folks and being afraid. You had your own little pod of people you were comfortable with. We at the Harlem Yacht Club, we launched boats ourselves. We are a fully volunteer army of members, of which Anthony and I are as well as husband Charlie, who's a past Commodore. We're all out there. We're pushing boats in the water, and we did it carefully. We were very successful in terms of that. We handled it well. We certainly abided by the mandates that were set out. We expanded our own outdoor dining, and we succeeded. We actually did not lose membership because of it. We encouraged folks to get out on their boats. So we felt successful in that way. We are now inundated with folks coming. They can't wait to be on their boats again and just escape everything because they feel a little bit more comfortable, I guess, in this environment.
And I heard yet that our steward ramped up her catering operation during the pandemic, and she was offering meals to go, and she did quite well at that.
We even had our steward deliver meals to the launch kids, to deliver the meals to the boats. during the pandemic.
Seward was delivering meals to Jersey.
Wow.
Very often we have a very active entertainment committee. And usually there is some event one Saturday or one Sunday of the weekend or something. This Saturday, we had the treat race. So people come in and have skippers meeting, all that, and they get quick bite to eat. Came back and we had pasta night, which is a tradition kind of treat race and pasta night. Next week it might be, well, next week it's watercolors or something after, so they're very good at that. They have things going, people come and they usually book that up with some sort of a meal, some sort of theme party with a meal and people hang out. And we've been very fortunate. We have a lot of, last couple of years, a lot of people, City Island residents have joined the social members. So they keep the place full. There's always something going on. Sunday morning, Bloody Marys is a local City Island group. I don't want to mention their name, but they're there every Sunday. It's really nice.
Over here.
And so our local City Islanders can come in for a cocktail or a drink at both the City Island and the Morris. Is that true?
And in which
Or
case,
City
and
Island.
the way things are supposed to be with the club is that we do have folks that do walk in, but we encourage them to join. It is an effort and Anthony, of course, is the membership chairman. And every effort is made to get folks that come in a little bit more consistently to join the club. And we've been very successful on that. When I say we, I mean Anthony. He's certainly the guy to go to on this.
We make them an offer they can't refuse.
And we're very fortunate now that we, some of our boat owners are getting younger now. Not that older people are getting younger, we're getting younger voters. And we've always feared that we were losing that aspect of the club. We kept looking over our shoulder, we're looking for somebody younger than us. And Anthony's push on this has been very successful in his outreach and supporting folks that are new to sailing and that sort of thing, or new to boating. We've been very successful in that regard. So the membership is getting a little bit younger, I guess.
And older at the same time.
Well, we're not getting younger.
Someone just mentioned that they were surprised to hear about all the clubs having so many fires. Do they find the cause to be due to many flammable or toxic fluids? Part of like taking care of the boats? Does anyone know?
A combination of all those things, old
Yeah.
wooden buildings and gasoline don't mix, I guess, and other varnishes, anything that's stored. I think that was the cause of some of it, and it's just we're very conscious of it. We still have a very old wooden building, and we have our locker house is old wooden as well. It's behind the building. We're careful about what people put in lockers. We can't catch them all, and you do what you can. We've upgraded our electricity in the building, that sort of thing. So constant upgrades. It's always it's a huge drain on dues and that sort of thing, but it's what you got to do.
Yeah, but the present building we have now had a fire. It was damaged by fire. It wasn't completely destroyed. It was just the top floor, the attic and all that. And the story I was told when I got there for some of the old timers, they were out July 4th and they were all sitting on the lawn watching fireworks. And some fireworks went up on the roof. And before they knew it, the building was on fire. So and you can still, if you crawl up in the attic, you can still see some of the places that were charred.
Lucky they were there
You're
to stop it right away.
Yeah.
There was a standing joke. When the locker room caught fire one time, there was a rigger that used to live in the room in the northeast corner of the locker room. And they said, Freddie, go get a bucket of water. The building's on fire. So he goes, comes back about a minute later and he says, hot or cold, Captain?
That room is known as Area 51 then.
It used to be wallpapered with the Colorado.
Okay.
Yeah, the front page. But the Harlem Yacht Club always had the first race of the season.
Mhm.
And I'm talking about 12 meters, 8 meters, 6 meters. And just like the American Spring Series is now, but only on a larger scale back then. And the City Island Yacht Club had the first radio controlled or figured race, by radio with Henry Sayers. He did a lot down there, as far as that goes. But they were across the street also in the old Black House. which is where Pilot or Pickwick Terrace is now.
Mhm.
There was a house there, and they were in there for about a year or two.
Harlem?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
no, not the Harlem, the
Oh,
City Island.
City
Yeah.
Island.
I heard we were offered to buy it, but we turned it down.
Well, I mean, everybody has real estate, would have at the time, but they did. And the house that they had on Cross Street was once owned by Captain Barr, who was the America's Cup skipper and probably the best skipper during his lifetime, which was pretty short. But he lived there for several years. And we have copies of the letter that he wrote, accepting to be the skipper on both Columbia and on Reliance in 1900, 01, and 03.
We have another question that maybe you're able to answer. Where's Jack's Rock? Was that where Stuyvesant was?
Jack's Rock is still there, and if you drive into Orchard Beach, the big oval going up to the promenade, on your right-hand side as you go in, on the road between where the buses go in and the cars can go around the circle, you'll see the rock there. And that's where the shoreline used to be, and that's where the clubhouse was. In fact, we got a movie here that was one of the first motion pictures, was made in 1914 or so, and it was taken right there, and you see somebody rolling out from Jack's Rock in the Stuyvesant.
Someone's asking, what makes City Island Yacht Clubs different than other yacht clubs around this area?
City Island Yacht Club. Well, one thing,
All the yacht clubs, City Island Yacht Clubs, I think, but
As a
maybe,
whole.
yeah, as a whole.
as a whole.
Yeah.
Well, first off, even though with the traffic, we're still very close to the city, so you can get here in a reasonable amount of time. What else is?
But you could have for yours specifically too,
Yeah.
yeah.
What makes it's also the quaintness of City Island. When I have friends come out here, they're just amazed that this place exists.
Mhm.
They never heard of it, they heard of it, but they weren't really familiar with it, and they come out here and they see the restaurants and the shops and just the way the place is laid out, and they really like it. They fall in love with it.
One of the greatest things about the fleets out here is that you can sail or power from your mooring with very few obstacles. Cuban Ledge and Big Tom are the only ones, and they're well marked, although some people still find them.
Some people don't believe it.
You have Long Island Sound right there, if you want to go and cruise it, you just, once again, from all the moorings, you're a mile from actually being in the channel that goes, go up to Montauk Point, and you can sail for the weekend, there's plenty of places to stop over, other yacht clubs. You want to drop an anchor, you drop an anchor somewhere, and you can just stay out there for 2 weeks.
City Island's a great place because location wise, because the transient yachts, when they're coming up the coast and they're headed out to Long Island, whether it's Block Island or further east or going up the coast, City Island's right in the middle in terms of stop off. So you get up through Hell's Gate, you might be looking for a place to stay overnight. We get that quite a bit actually.
Yeah, we
We get repeat customers back, more visiting yachtsmen that are making that transit.
We got that as well. Last weekend, we had guests from France and Germany
Wow.
at the club for a few days.
Was that huge catamaran?
No, the French boat was a big blue, looked like a Beneteau or a Janelle, and the German boat was a, the Danish boat, X-Yacht, 38-foot X-Yacht.
Okay, there's another question here. When the Harlem Yacht Club was on the Harlem River, is that where they did the sailing? It seems like it was a very limited area for sailing, or did they keep their boats someplace else?
Oh, well, that's why we had stations, because they would do the racing from the stations. And the racing would be like out to Execution Route. On the Draw's Neck Bridge area.
All right.
That would be the
And
home
that's-
base because the city was right in Manhattan. Although the Harlem originally had model yachts and they sailed those out of there. And actually the roots go back to the 1850s, right?
Well, we need to talk about that. The first Harlem Yacht Club morphed into the Knickerbocker.
Yes,
And so we weren't related to them really.
not in splitting up from College
No.
Point.
No. Not from my research, that's how it. And I actually spoke to the Commodore of the Knickerbocker before they dissolved. And he said that their club memory is that they started out as the Harlem Yacht Club. So what happened was in 1874, they moved to, they first moved to either College Point or Fort Morris, I can't remember, before they moved out to Manhasset Bay. And they stopped using the name Harlem. They became the Knickerbocker at that point.
Yes,
And if you're familiar with Knickerbocker, if you remember Knickerbocker beer, Knickerbocker means northern Manhattan or Harlem. What did I say? So, in 1883, some former members of the Knickerbocker started our club. And they incorporated separately as a different club. Now, I don't know if you would consider that the same club or not.
well,
But it's
that's
two
true with a
separate-
lot of clubs.
It's two separate incorporations.
That's true with a lot of clubs, and you'll see established and incorporated. Most clubs are 2 different dates.
We have another question here, a little specific. There's a white building on the east side of the island, which I used to think was the Pilot House. But is this a vestige of the City Island Yacht Club? It's a
Yeah.
small white pier structure, a small white structure on a pier.
No, that was the Pilot House.
Oh, Barbara Edwards is chiming in. What do you have, Barbara?
All I know is from Captain Sadler, God rest his soul, that was an old pilot house. When the pilots would ferry the large ships coming down from the Sound into the city, they would have pilots there. And that was a station for the pilots that would bring the ships down the island.
The actual Pilot House is smaller, red to the south. All right, we got someone else to weigh in. What do you got?
Could you get Google Earth on here so you can actually see what we're talking about?
I'm not even sure where it is. Jean, can you give me a location to figure this out?
Is it still there?
Yeah. It's one by John.
Yeah.
Right. That was on the,
Very unique building.
Right,
the Duriers Pier.
to the east of the property there is a little square building. And
Yes.
there used to be one right on.
Mommy should know this. Has the answer to everything.
They're selling that property.
This one isn't connected. Mine is. And I can't find it, and Jean isn't giving the exact location, so I'm not sure where it is, but we'll pause and maybe come back to that. We have another question. Would the clubs consider having some sort of annual party that they take turns hosting so that the sailing community can grow a little bit bigger, maybe help crew rosters grow for racers? Yeah. And this is similar to what I had said, when we first sat down. Has there ever been sort of a meeting of the brains of all the yacht clubs to figure out a strategy for?
Meeting down on.
Yeah.
We do have those get-togethers after races and end of the season, whether it's the trophies are given out and so forth.
Yeah.
But maybe
BBYRA pretty much handled that, and Shasta Bay Commodores Association, which was big in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, was also, they did everything to encourage sailing and boating on the Sound. So.
I could ask a question. One of the things that's always struck me about City Island is I think every kid who grows up here should know how to sail. at least row, but sail. And I'm delighted that the City Island Yacht Club's is a very active program. We've been giving them oyster information, so they've been sailing over to my dock, you know, to learn about the Oyster Reef project, but.
We also have a kayak membership.
And a kayak, yeah, and you all have a junior program now too, I
Yes, we
see those adorable boats.
Yeah.
But I really think, you know, that the clubs need to push these more. I mean, you are all doing it, which is terrific, but I do think that it's important. Stuyvesant had a very active group there for some years, yeah. And I don't think the Morris does, do they? Have a junior program?
Not that I know of.
I don't think so, no.
We wanted to do it for years, but we always had a problem getting it organized because our members are so far flung.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true, in all clubs, it is
Yeah.
a difficult thing to do. Sydney Treat actually had the Blue Jays there in the mid-60s, which was a lot of fun unless you were racing against Sydney Treat.
Do you have any other questions, Lauren?
We have no other questions. We have some more clarity on the house. It's the Hellgate Pilot House at Consolidated Boatyard on Pilot Street. So it seems like that,
I think I took my first sailing lesson there.
yeah,
Yes, that's when Glenn Card had New York Sailing School. That's
Out
right.
of
We went
Consolidated.
down Pilot Street and up this stairway to this house that was on the pier.
No.
That's still there.
Yeah, the locker room, I think, right at the foot of the pier is one. And then at the end was a little shack on pilings that the pilots on the Ambrose or whatever pilot boat would be there at that time would monitor.
I would like to ask a question, in case anyone would be interested. Have there been any significant changes in water sports or sailing that has impacted the club's membership or operations in any way throughout time?
External,
Anyway, in any way that,
I mean, the club boat program has impacted, I think, both of our clubs. It brings people in.
yeah,
They don't necessarily have to have a boat. They get to know how to sail, taking lessons at the same time. They can give, let the kids have lessons, you know, so it all kind of leads up to somebody buying a boat. Then, you know, as a permanent, become long-time members and permanent more, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's helped quite a bit.
Yeah, another thing
Our
that
social membership helps also, it just brings people in.
Yeah.
we find also that helps is the ASA sailing school. And then they get interested and then they become, let's say, club boat members. And we're talking about it, then they come from club boat and they buy their own boat. And next thing you know,
yeah,
they're a club officer, you know.
yeah.
we have one last question, but I don't know if anyone here can answer it. Will East River ferries have service to City Island? Do the yacht clubs have a say on ferry service to City Island?
No, we don't.
We don't have to say, no.
No, but do you have, if in a perfect world?
I personally think it may cause problems. I don't just think go to Orchard Beach if they were to do it.
Yeah.
But other than that, that's just a personal thing on my part.
All right.
Ferries are very expensive.
Yeah.
And require lots of subsidies. And typically don't make money.
All right, there you have it, David. All right, well, we are gonna wrap up then. If there are any other last questions, let us know.
If Everybody would like to come visit the club.
That's right.
The clubhouse is open Wednesday through Sunday.
Right.
Restaurants closed Monday and Tuesday.
All right, and do you want to give
Usually
hours?
Somebody around, you know, answer questions or show them around the clubhouse somewhere. The facility.
Anthony, is it okay, if they know that they're able to contact you, if they're
Sure.
interested in any membership
Membership,
information?
membership at HRC.org. Go, just go on the club's website, leads you wherever you want to go.
And George, is there anyone at City Island Yacht Club that is a good like point person in case anyone would like to reach out?
Yes, we have a membership channel also, and also we have a website that
Yes.
where you need to go.
Yes. So anything else that's important, I know if we have a few more minutes, I just wanted to touch on, Evelyn, you kind of touched on it earlier about, how the club continued thriving through the pandemic, you know, with your, steward just cooking and delivering all these meals. Is there anything that you think, either after the pandemic coming back together, all members, you know, that was important to share? Or anything that either club learned through the pandemic that helped it adapt or help it to, you know, continue thriving?
I don't know, I think Peter said it best. What was a great place to be during the
Yes.
pandemic.
We adjusted, we moved when we had to, within the mandates. I think we did it very well.
Yeah.
And we, of course, gave some relief to ABC Catering, who was our steward, and that helped her. And she had a thriving business. Anthony said, going right out the side window of the place, and get people lined up, space 6 feet apart.
Yeah.
Everybody's so tired of hearing that, but nonetheless.
We had
it
to build
did work.
another deck.
We did, we built the lower deck in order to spread people out and that sort of
Wow.
thing. So you have to keep moving ahead, and that was I was on the board, of course, doing all this as I moved up, and it was just, you gotta keep moving the club ahead. Think out of the box a little bit, and it worked.
So you guys adapted and continued thriving. That's great.
Yes, we did.
And George, anything about City Island?
It's pretty much the same, but we noticed that once we opened up the back lawn, the dining became very popular.
Yeah.
So it changed the club completely, because we didn't use the back lawn for much other
Wow.
than some chairs and people looking out at the water. Now it's a popular place for people to eat, and it's changed things a lot.
That's awesome. Well, thank you guys again for being here, answering questions for the audience. We are very, very grateful for you all. If there's any last minute questions or comments.
I have one.
Yes, go ahead.
Which is that the yacht club, one of the things that the yacht clubs do is to have parties, and, you know, people can have wedding receptions there and so forth. Also, the City Island Yacht Club, just as much, I think, there, which is to have these private parties. You, for example, host the City Island Garden Club,
Right.
which is a very important thing that you do. You have the Fordham shells, right?
We do.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you all do more than just run yacht clubs here. I mean, it's a meeting place, I think, for a lot of people, which I
Right,
think
and
is
we
very
also just
important.
this year started a junior racing program.
Yeah, very important.
And we host the Sea Scouts, actually, and the US Coast Guard Auxiliary meets at the also.
Right.
Do a fair amount of.
Didn't Ellen bring the garden club this year? Didn't Ellen Murphy bring the garden club this year?
For the lunch, yes,
Oh, okay.
but we have our regular meetings.
Oh, I see,
Yeah,
meetings.
yeah.
Okay.
Right, exactly.
Good.
But you also have had people like from Rocking the Boat and from all these organizations come, that Coast Guard comes and talks.
She
And
does a
you
lot.
do programs about power, what is that?
So we have a close relationship with the Power Squad.
Right, exactly, and they do teaching, and so
Teaching,
people
right,
can get
that's-
certificates and
Yep,
stuff.
in both
Very
places.
important. Yeah, more than just,
Yep.
you know, private sailing.
They're not just a pretty face.
Sorry.
Ouch.
All right.
All right, well, thank you everyone so much. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to us or leave it in the chat box. Please visit the Harlem Yacht Club's website as well as the City Island Yacht Club's website. In case you're interested in finding out any more information or paying a visit, you're more than welcome. Here at the museum, we are open every Saturday and Sunday, 1 to 4, and we look forward to seeing you all. But thank you all again to the representatives from Harlem as well as City Island Yacht Club for being here, and thank you all for taking time from your busy lives to sit with us this evening. We are very appreciative, and thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.